Hi, my name is Ayris Modica. I work for the Bayfield County Land Records Department as a NextGen 911 GIS database specialist. So what that means is I'm updating our dispatch mapping system for the new 911 standards. So today I'm going to be talking about how we went through that process, what our goals are, what are the results. I'll go through a couple of glossary items, what NextGen 911 is, our process, databases we used and created, address reassignment, GIS layer creation and NENA standards, our results or how successful we've been so far, and any questions. So first, I'd like to go over a couple items because otherwise it's going to sound like alphabet soup as I go through this presentation. So we have CAD, Computer Aided Dispatch, NENA, National Emergency Number Association, NGID, NENA Globally Unique ID. And on the right there, I have a couple of those NGIDs. So the top is for our road centerline layer. And then I have the SSAP, which is our site structure address point. And at the bottom, I have a layer for our incorporated municipality boundaries. And each layer has its own unique code. It's quite lengthy, so it's abbreviated here. And then each feature has its own number, so it'll have its own unique ID. So if there's an issue with that road segment or address, we can easily identify what feature needs to be addressed. Our ESN, which is Emergency Service Number, EZNet, Emergency Service IP or Internet Protocol Network, PSAP, Public Safety Answering Point, ALI, Automatic Location Identification, and MSAG, which is the Master Street Address Guide. What is NextGen 911? NextGen 911 is a newer 911 system that is being implemented nationwide. This is going to replace the old system, which is based off analog data stored from landline customer information. If you do not have a landline, your information is not being stored. That means if you call 911 from your cell phone or away from home, again on your cell phone, it's giving general information to the dispatcher, and it's a little bit of a struggle to find you. So NextGen 911 is going to mitigate that and bring us into the future and meet cell phones. So the current system, like I said, relies on data collected from landline information, and then NextGen 911 is going to use cell phone GPS and improved GIS data. Okay. So in the future, NextGen 911 will allow for 911 users to send texts to 911, video messages. We'll be able to share medical data, building blueprints, and other large data files. And a dispatcher will be able to see that real time, process it, give it to dispatchers, or excuse me, police officers as needed, or other important entities. We will also, in the future, be able to perform call routing and vehicle routing. So currently, we're not able to do vehicle routing. That's similar to when you use Google Maps. It'll tell you the fastest route. It'll tell you if there's any closures, speed limits, stuff like that. So in the future, we're able to do that as well. It may be a little confusing or unknown to some, but the reason there's such difficulty or there's this big push for a new system is even though you, as a common everyday user, am able to go find an address with your Google Maps, dispatch doesn't have that. We only have the data we have stored. We're not able to use Google Maps. Officer doesn't use Google Maps. They use this new other system. So there's this just data gap that we need to fill. So how efficient could it possibly be? The current system, the location accuracy of a ping cell phone is within 100 meters if the call is triangulated off multiple cell towers. Of course, in Bayfield County, in Ashland County, in most of the state, we have poor cell reception. I know that if I sit outside the courthouse here, I cannot make a phone call. So in our forests, obviously that kind of diminishes even more. So if you're calling from a cell phone, and like I said, you're not in a location where there's high cell coverage, the location of the nearest cell tower, the address of the nearest cell tower is given to the dispatcher. Obviously, that is not useful information and is not your actual address. That's an issue. With cell phone GPS, you can give your GPS coordinates, and then it'll just streamline the process and overall just make it safer for people. I know we're also working to implement our USNG points and things like that that'll also make it better. How are things going at the state level? As of February, so a little bit outdated here, but things move slowly. 8 counties are live on this new system. 44 have active projects to go live and go live dates. 15 counties have signed up with a contract but haven't started the process yet. And then there's a few different municipal areas that are larger or other counties that have chose a different provider. What are we doing at the county level? Bayfield County has placed priority on the development and implementation of NextGen 911 to meet new standards and provide the most efficient emergency response we can. This includes thorough GIS data validation, layer and database creation, as well as software and hardware upgrades. In conjunction with this data remediation process, we're also in the midst of a dispatch merger with Ashland County. The image I have to the right here, you can see Bayfield County and then Ashland County. The black outline is our PSAP and provisioning boundary. The provisioning boundary is the area in which we provide over the data. Data is our responsibility. You can see that it extends past our land mass, and we actually go into Lake Superior, and we do have a few islands, so that makes our data a little bit tricky to manage, or a little bit we kind of just do our best to create a line or use other data sets to make a line. Okay. Our provisioning boundary will remain the same. Ashland will remain over their data. We will have our data, but our PSAT boundary will be joined together, and then calls will be routed to the same dispatch center. We have utilized Datamark's VEP tool as well as Geocom's Data Hub to complete our GIS validation process. Both of these services require you to zip your files into a geodatabase, upload them into their system. Often you have to field map, so every single field you have to kind of tell the system what you want that field to mean or represent, and then you go forward with that, and markup files are produced. Often these markup files are very large. There's typically about 10 to 20 produced each upload. So for Datamark, which we used from mid-February to mid-April, this is the layers that are produced. As you can see, if you look at them all stacked together, you can't tell much from this other than, hey, there must be issues because the map's neon. So you have to look at each layer individually. Each color represents a different issue. Often there's issues along our borders, so our incorporated municipality borders. Roads were not snapped and broken at those points. And they need to just be snapped, which is a simple fix, and then attributes kind of adjusted. This is what the markup layers look with Geocom. So a little bit easier to look at. A lot less layers were produced, which was very helpful for me, just kind of starting out and with this system not being as overwhelmed. Additionally, Geocom has been a lot, I don't want to say better, but their system's just different than Datamark. Each software has its own quirks, and Geocom is able to tell us there's an issue with point NGID 123, and this is the issue. We were expecting the to left county to be Bayfield County, but we got the value of Ashland County. This is not correct. Please look at this and adjust this. Where with Datamark, it was more so flagging, there's an issue, figure it out. So it was a little bit overwhelming. So the software is not perfect. Human validation is still required in some cases to weed out false positives. Often we rely on our different software, and it can be really exciting to get a new system, or you can get really great information from these systems. But if we're putting in data that's not accurate, we're going to get stuff out of it that's not accurate. So if over time we're not managing our layers and our different databases, if we're trying to validate with that information, we're getting back junk markup layers, essentially. Bayfield County has previously had error counts of over 3 million, but currently has around 2,800. This is not to say I have corrected 3 million errors. It simply means field mapping or just switching softwares has greatly reduced our anomaly count. So Geocom's validation tool is so sensitive that it can recognize if an address point is not, it might be near a road segment where it fits in, but it is not exactly where it should be. I don't think you can see my cursor here. But so this address point on the bottom here, this 14295 County Highway H, the road segment that the driveway is off does not have that within its range. It's actually the segment highlighted in teal, which ends in 14295, and that road center line that the address does connect to needs to be adjusted. And that's a simple fix. It's just with your naked eye, you aren't going to know that. You need the software to tell you. Majority of the errors flagged are a result of our MSAG, which is the Master Street Address Guide, and the ALLY database not being updated over the years. Our CAD system requires the use of legacy data. However, these systems were poorly maintained and multiple errors still exist. Currently, we have an MSAG to RCL match rate of 35%. Previously, it was 25%, but after we realized we have a couple trailing spaces, we got rid of those, then that fixed that. An ALLY to RCL match rate of 94, and ALLY to SSAP 93. Another common reason features are flagged is due to field mapping errors. Most of the attributes now present in our data are newly populated or have been heavily manipulated to meet the NENA and WLA standards. And these standards are, of course, always changing, so what was once true needs to be tweaked a little bit. The MSAG and ALLY are data sets previously maintained by emergency management. These data sets are the landline customer information I was discussing earlier and is used in our current dispatch system. So this is a picture of what the MSAG looks like. You can see there's street name information, the range associated with the road, the side, meaning on what side is there odd and even numbers, the postal community, the county, state, and the emergency service number. And then as I make changes, it tracks it, and then I'm able to kind of verify, and then someone else on their end, on CenturyLink's end, actually is processing that change for me. This is an ALLY record snapshot. So you can see the phone number, which I kind of blocked off the ends of the phone numbers, the cell phone company, the house number associated with it, and then the address, information, postal community, customer name, emergency service number. And then this is what it looks like if you call from a cell phone. As you can see, the street name, community, and customer information are all filled in with general filler data. So this is what I mean when you call from a cell phone, the dispatcher is not getting information from you. They're getting this. It's not helpful for them to see, oh, you're Bayfield County Wireless. It's not helpful. Other helpful validation databases I've used, so our city and county sign inventory, as well as municipal gas tax maps. A complete road and address sign inventory give me an on-the-ground perspective without going in the field. When working on data sets as large as this, or data sets that change over time, it's very important to do sort of a check. If a snowplow knocks over a sign or a sign never gets installed, we don't hear about that typically unless we go look for it. This is our sign inventory. We do have someone going around in the field taking pictures of our road signs and address signs. So you can't really tell, but the pale red squares, those are road signs, and then the darker red circles are address signs. So as I click on each point, a picture of the sign populates, and then there's a couple attribute fields that the surveyor is filling out. So sign condition, a lot of our signs are missing in the county, so we're going through and then we're going to be replacing those signs or sort of addressing those issues. And gas tax maps. Gas tax maps are maps submitted by towns and cities to the Wisconsin Department of Transportation. This map is similar to our GIS roads layer visually. However, only roads maintained by the municipality are represented. Because this map is submitted to the state, you would expect it to be accurate. Of course, it is not. And so as I'm using these maps to kind of validate our data, we've been finding different anomalies and discussing with the townships. how to fix these. They're simple fixes, but just so we can all have the same information, all be on the same page, and in the future use these maps as sort of a quick validation year to year if anything's been updated. Bayfield County currently has around 16,000 site address points and 6,200 road centerline segments that will need continuous validation and editing as these maps, boundary layers, and different database receive updates. As a result of the complexity of some of their subdivisions and cities, we are viewing some of the addressing errors or some of the areas where we need a little help or an address couldn't be as good as it should be. We're going through and updating those as needed, taking into consideration if it's a person's primary or secondary residence. Obviously, it's a lot more impactful if someone's living there full time versus if they live in Illinois and it's their vacation home. Okay. So what that looks like, or why we're doing that is, so in the central dot there, the 5595 US Highway 2, so their address is off of US Highway 2, which is the road running west-east at the top there, kind of. But this address does not have access to US Highway 2. There's no driveway off of US Highway 2. The driveway is off of that kind of curved southwestern section of the East Deep Lake Road. So if they get a call or they say, I'm at address 5592 US Highway, they're gonna get or the dispatcher, if they call from that address and they say, I'm here, the police officer, the EMS, the fireman, they're not going to be able to find them in a reasonable amount of time because they're gonna be looking for this fire number along the road and it's simply not there. So readdressing these simple mistakes is gonna hopefully shorten response time. Currently, we have around 180 addresses that may be reassigned. And then we're doing this with the goal to reach a 98% match rate to go live with our new system. These addresses are errors currently included in our anomaly count, although there's nothing we can do about them in the meantime, so we're sort of just ignoring them. And then we also have created numerous fields and updated many layers to help us reach this. So some of these layers are included to go live, our RCL, our site address points. We have a police, fire, and ambulance layer, which I have in the picture here, our provisioning boundary, PSET boundary, and our incorporated municipality polygon. So in the picture I've up here is our zip code layer. I have created this layer off of US Census data, which gets us pretty close, but isn't 100% accurate. I don't know if anyone in this room's tried to contact the Postal Service for any sort of data, but you may not receive any, most likely. And other layers we are looking to create are landmarks and driveway and entrance points, or update driveway entrance point. So if someone calls and they say, I'm at the cable boat landing, they don't know the address to that boat landing, but we can input in our system cable boat landing and find them simply because we can just kind of look up that address. So some of our results of this process, currently of the 1.3 million checks being conducted, so not 1.3 million features being checked, but the simple checks that they do, we only have 2,700 errors remaining. Geocom requires data to be at a match rate of 98% or higher to submit to the next entity. Bayfield County has a tentative match rate of 99.9979, and as of yesterday, Geocom has begun submitting our provisioning and PSET boundaries for the last step of validation. So while I've been using Geocom, so about the last 2 months, this graph represents my different uploads and how successful they were. You can see the big spikes are false errors. I didn't magically create 14,000 errors, and I certainly didn't magically create 3 million at the bottom here. This is just due to field mapping issues and simple fixes. So another visual of the results. On the left is where we started with Geocom, and on the right, this is where we're at now. A lot of these points, like I mentioned before, are addressing anomalies that we're addressing but can't fix immediately. Those are represented here, as well as some of our roads. They run alongside of our boundary, of our municipality boundary, but since they're not actually snapped to that boundary, it's reading some of the features incorrectly because it wants you to be completely accurate. If this road is in the polygon of town of Barksdale, it wants the feature right and left township to be Barksdale, not right Washburn, left Barksdale. So again, that requires some human validation to go through some of those errors. Any questions?
If your sign inventory, is that separate from your address point business?
Our sign inventory is and correct me if I'm misspeaking, it's in survey 123, and we're more so using it as a visual validation. It's not, there's no connection map wise. We could import that data, but
That's kind of what we're working on, another aspect to it is that, at the road intersection, one driveway may have four addresses. So we take, picture of the location of the road, entrance to the access point, and then we drive down that driveway and fill the rest of the sign. How do you control the access points?
So you're trying to maintain like an ingress egress point at the bottom of your site structure every point?
Yeah, it would be, yeah, we'd like to merge them together for access points and the signing. Maintenance of it. But, there's grant money, so. Maintain through that right now.
yes.
With the example that you provided, the address that was on East Lake Road, next to Highway 2, the address is incorrect because there's no driveway, there's no access from Highway 2 directly to that. Was it addressed that way because there was a driveway to that spot and it went away, or did they just mess up to begin with, do you think?
Possibly, or they planned to have a driveway, which I guess someone had to install the sign though. One of our people would have had to install the road sign, and they should have recognized, hey, we're putting this sign not on US Highway 2.
Is there a sign there?
Yes,
Sign on Deep Lake Road.
yeah, I believe so.
They could have moved it themselves. They could have moved the driveway and moved the sign. We've had people all over the sign and move it.
We've also, we've had people make their own signs, especially own road signs.
Take the phone number.
I actually never thought of how, because I'm not in the world of addressing and parcel and land records, but I never really thought of how an address got created. Like we get assigned the address based upon your access to a road. So if you're on Cherryville and Gallatin Road, well, sure, I'm on the intersection, but my driveway comes off of Cherryville. So, oh, you got a Cherryville address. I never would have thought about that, but that's how addressing work.
For us, it's been really helpful to have a driveway layer, because in Bayfield County, some of our driveways are a mile long, or you know what I mean? Like they're very long, and the number might not make sense visually on a map, but if you look at where the road actually comes on or the driveway comes out, it makes sense. Visually, it's a little confusing, but that is someone's full-time job to address, so, or part-time job.
And building footprints too.
So ideally, the site address point should be connected to the driveway, which should be connected to the access point, which should be snapped to the road. That may or may not be how it is in all instances yet, but that is the theory. And then for vehicle routing, that'll be very helpful in the future.
I don't think we have the topology cutting up stories. When we, let's say we move the road, make it better, or move all snapping from the driveways. We have to be aware of that.
You also mentioned early on that dispatch and responders, first responders, whether that's a police or whatever it is, that they can't or don't use Google Maps to go through.
Well, they may, I guess, but I know that dispatchers do not. And I believe police officers do not as well because they use that same system. They may on their phone if they can't find it, or they could look it up on their laptop if they can't find it, I would assume, because they have to find them somehow. However, in the dispatch system and in the system as a whole, that is not the capability. So if you take Google Maps and you move it back about 15, 20 years, that's where our dispatch system is.